What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're heading out today to do some stumps and tree stuff. So I was working on this tractor back here yesterday. I had some mechanical things I was working through, and overhead comes like my 5-year dream. Literally 100 feet off the ground, a red Kodiak with white floats with a PT6 buzzes right over my shop. And I just recently written down my goals, and it's a new year, so this is a good time where you sit down and you look at your stuff and you're like, okay, I gotta write my goals out. I gotta take pictures of my goals and dreams. I gotta put together a plan. I gotta actively make this happen. If you don't write it out, if you don't take pictures and build a vision board, if you don't visually understand that you've got to get your subconscious working and in aligning with no, this is what we're doing, so that your conscious mind can look at it and go, okay, the actions that we're doing at this very moment in time, are they helping us achieve said goal? My big 6-year goal, 5-year goal, 60 months, is to buy a Beaver and then convert it to a PT6. A little bit of an older aircraft, parts might be harder to find. Canadian aircraft don't make them anymore. Or buy a Kodiak, a little bit more expensive, about twice the price, so maybe a Beaver first and move up into a Kodiak. But I would love to consolidate all of my gear, my tractors, loaders, whatever, all that stuff, all the trucks, all that stuff, in 5 years time period, sell my current company off, which is a local tree company. That's like my trade. Tree, land clearing, that stuff. That's what we do mulching and all that stuff. Sell my gear off and consolidate it into, go back to the one man, one Bobcat show, but be one man, one cargo plane, and just run little packages around to the Caribbean, the Bahamas, Colombia, Argentina, maybe fly down that way, maybe Mexico and Texas, maybe that's easier, maybe out west for the summer times, whatever, dropping hunting and fishing guys off at lodges if I have the right licensing for it. So that's my 5-year plan. Obviously, I've got to buy a training aircraft first. I've got to probably buy an entry-level STOL plane second. Got to trade that up, and I keep moving into, and I've got to continue to build my company. I like my company at this point in time. I couldn't trade my company for a Kodiak. Yeah, Kodiak is Beaver puts you back about $500K, give or take, with a piston, single engine piston. If you want to have the PT6 upgrade to it, you're probably in the $800-900 mil range. Kodiak, you're probably looking at 1.2 to 1.5 for a nice newer Kodiak. So that's where I've got to go. That's what I've got to make happen. I want to do a paid for aircraft and do that. And so this thing buzzes right over top. My buddy and I, so this morning I wake up and my wife is like, hey, the FAA has grounded flights, and I'll be publishing this video in a day or two, several days from now, because kind of backed up my office work from other things. So at this moment, as of this morning, the FAA has grounded flights, and I think this is hilarious because these airlines are barely going to be able to hold on. Their borrowing costs have increased 5 times in the last year with the interest rates. Their fuel costs have doubled in the last 2 years, and it looks like we're in the 1970s, where what did oil do in the 1970s? It went from $3 a barrel to $30 a barrel. Well, what if we take $40 or $50 a barrel as our starting base and say that 2020 or 2021 started the 1970s? Again, we're in a repeat of this, except this time they're raising interest rates faster than they did before, but not high enough. It's not higher than the rate of inflation, and they're printing more. And so maybe it's worse than the 1970s. But let's just say that the 1970s are back, and oil 10x's. Well, jet fuel is going to go from the current $5-6 a gallon, where it sits today, maybe in the 4 range. But it's going to move to an area where it's going to crush the demand. Not only are the financing costs for airlines going to be way higher, and they're 5 times higher than they were a year ago. The fuel costs way higher, twice what they were a year or two ago. But this will continue, and so my buddy and I have an outstanding bet, which will conclude on Mother's Day of 2027. This is the day where I plan on personally having the deal for my aircraft in process. Maybe it's getting, maybe that cargo, plane or whatever is getting inspected, maybe it's it's annual, maybe I'm getting the paperwork for it, maybe I'm still searching for it, but that's kind of the time frame. And Mother's Day of 27 is where this bet will come to a head, and the bet is JFK to London. The price of a flight will cost, in his opinion, less at that moment in time than it does on Mother's Day of 22. And we took the flight costs at that point in time, and it's like $1,500, $1,800. We got to kind of solidify the exact, like, what metric are we using here? But he's basically like, oh, dude, ascent of men, man. We're going up, bro. We're always going up. You know, things are getting better. Things are always getting better. And I'm like, no. He's like, well, in the short term, yeah, things could be bad. But in the long term, 5 years, yeah, sure, everything's good. And I'm like, dude, what you're missing here is a demand destruction that will inevitably occur through higher fuel prices, higher interest prices, and a demographic that is in decline. You have more old people than you have young people. So you have a labor shortage all around. We know that we have a labor shortage of 900,000 workers this year. But we had a labor shortage last year of about 900,000 workers. That's going to put us in 8 to 12 month time frame at 1.8 million workers short than what we need for our current things. So we know that this will peak in 2034 because it's a demographical certainty. We know that the millennials, their peak demand, like when they will be demanding the most in goods and services, that people will typically hit peak demand somewhere in their mid-30s. Like they're buying as much house as they're buying as much car, buying as much diapers, buying as much, like they're consuming max consumption during those periods. And then their demand kind of drops off. Their earnings increase throughout their 50s, but their demand goes down for things. And so we kind of know that all these things are kind of stacking, like waves on top of waves on top of waves. In addition to that, we know that from 2020 and previously, that people or the oil and gas industry wasn't investing in sustaining costs. Meaning if I pump 1 million barrels out a day, I better be getting 1 million barrels a day 5-7 years from now, and I need to start that process today. So we're pumping 1 million today. I better have some geologists in a field somewhere taking some surveys and taking some drill holes to find new deposits. And what we know is that for the last 2 years, there's been an underfunding and investment from the industry itself, from large banks because it's become a non-green thing to do, and that this has stacked to well over $1 trillion in lack of investment. So 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, 7 years from now, we will start to see the effects of 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. So there's this lagging indicator that's occurring. And so my buddy is probably going to definitely lose this bet, because I suggested to him, like, why don't we make the bet in gold? So that way it's like a constant store value, because who knows what the value of the dollar will be 5 years from now. So he and I had to solidify this bet. And when I get the bet solidified, I will put it in the comment below, a pinned comment of what our bet is. But I think it's interesting because we live in a time period, in a moment where, like, this is baked into the cake. And so as investors or as speculators or as business owners, we can look at this and go, okay, like, how do I benefit from this? Like, I see the news. The news is null. It's not positive or negative, right? Like, oh, oil prices are going up 10x. Well, if you're a buyer of oil, that's bad. If you're an investor in oil, that's great. So what you got to do is you've got to move to put yourself on the side that's going to be the winning side, the side that's going to tip in your favor. So I put that out to pique your interest and and to share, you know, some of my 23 goals and what I'm doing, what I'm aligning to, and some of the future content will be very much streamed around that. Because my goal, quite literally, is to build a company, to sell a company, to consolidate into my dream goal. Not that I think it's a growing industry, but just that's what I want to do. As a lifestyle business, that's what I want to do. 5 years from now, I should be in a financial position where I can make that happen. And I want to have that type of lifestyle, like a one-man airplane. Maybe it'll turn into something bigger than that. Maybe it'll just be like a hobby. Maybe it'll just be a side business. But anyway, I will see you guys on the next one.